Hey everyone, welcome to a MassTransit Commute. Tonight I'm going to really quick knock out a feature that's coming in 8.04, and this kind of goes in line with what the industry's been doing. I mean, this whole minimal API thing is getting kind of crazy, and MassTransit's always had simple handlers, and I thought, what would this look like in a container thing? So I threw some code in, and I'm going to walk you through that real quick, see what it looks like. So when you're configuring MassTransit, we're all familiar with like add consumer, add saga state machine, add activity, all of those things. There's a new way to configure handlers, and handlers are just simple delegates that can handle a method. So, ASP.NET has added things like map-get and some of these new features. And I thought, why not make it really easy to just add a handler in a MassTransit project? So instead of having to define a consumer and all that, I thought it would be pretty slick and simple. So that's what I'll walk you through now. So in this example, I'm just doing add handler, and I'm writing an async method that takes a getOrderStatus class. Well, actually, this is a record, which just takes a order ID. You can see we're using a primary constructor on that. And we're just putting the logic right in line. We're doing a simple delay, and then we're just returning order status of order ID and accepted. Order status is just another record that has an additional status property. And we're just hard coding accepted because honestly, I don't care. It's just a simple example. I'm using RabbitMQ and I'm setting this up. And I have an order status worker, which all this thing is doing in the background is just creating a request client and calling get response with that order status for the get order status request and just dumping that out to the screen. So if I hit this and let it run, it's going to come up and you're going to see about every second, it's just going to say current order status accepted. And that's all running within that simple file there. If I look at RabbitMQ, I can see that I have a get order status queue. This is which one is bound to the handler, and you can see that it's using traffic. It's bound to the worker contracts get order status, which is that record type, and just doing its work. So that's pretty simple, not doing a whole lot. Let's put a little more meat into it. So I'm going to jump over here to my Scratch and say, okay, well, let's add a little bit more of a complex handler. So let's add another one here. And this one is going to take a consume context for no particular reason at all, but also inject a service, this iOrder service. So it's just a parameter on the method. I mean, I think they like to call this like method injection, but since it's a delegate, it's just a parameter and we're figuring that type out. Then I'm going to go back to the Scratch and I'm going to add these two files as well. So I'm going to add an additional hosted service that's going to do those cancel order calls. And then I'm just adding a scoped iOrder service, which is just this service that this is dependent upon. And you can see it just calls await cancel order and then returns order canceled. The cancel order worker just does the same thing the other one does, just does it in a loop. So now if I run this, I can see that it's going to come up and I've got order canceled. So again, the logic is right there. It's easy to cancel, nothing going on. Super simple. The logic in the code is just clean. It's using regular types. I'm not, in this case, I'm not using the consume context. In this case, I am. The message does have to be the first argument, so you can't like get weird. MassTransit's not going to figure all that out. The first argument has to either be the message type or a consume context of the message type. And then up to a number of arguments you can have can be any of those types. They do have to be reference types and, of course, registered in the container because that's where it's going to resolve them. By default, it's using the name of the message type to format the consumer name. You can override that. It's just like any other consumer. So you could change the endpoint and say endpoint name equals order status, just kind of override that behavior. I don't think I can use X there. I think I have to use E. And now if I run that, you'll see that that endpoint is now running and configured on the order status endpoint instead of what it was before. And I believe I can even just say I want to run both of these things on the same node. I could run them right like that and say, okay, well, they're actually the same thing. So now if I run it, I should be able to see that both of those endpoints are configured on the same endpoint. You can see there it is. They're both on the endpoint order status. And if I go over to RabbitMQ, I can see that order status is there, and it actually has two bindings, one for each message type. So pretty cool, the same type of overloads there. You have the control you need. You can also set prefetch count, concurrent message limit, all of those things right there within that delegate. So like if I wanted to come in here and say e.concurrent message limit equals 100, I could do that, piece of cake. You're able to tune that stuff as you want. So that's that. It's kind of cool. Would I use that? Probably not, but it's kind of neat. But another aspect of it that I think is really cool is with unit testing. So with the test harness, it's really easy to write tests for all your consumers, clients, APIs, whatever. And I thought this would be a perfect place to use handlers, especially since people are like, well, how do I mock a consumer? Well, now you can just go in and say, okay, I want to add a handler. It's going to call order canceled. All it's going to do is say, if someone sends a message of cancel order, we're going to return an order canceled. And we can see in my test, it's going to get a request client, and then it's going to call get response order canceled for that cancel order. And if we run this test, we can see that it's going to create up that mock consumer on a test endpoint. It's going to handle the request, and everything is going to work great. So it makes it really easy to create mock consumers or just inline handlers to help write your unit tests a little easier. So pretty cool stuff, very simple to set up. It follows the same conventions as a consumer does. So yeah, so those are handlers. That's coming in 8.04. It's available in the pre-release NuGets right now. And catch you next time.